Discover the untold saga of a woman whose relentless courage turns a life of despair into a battleground of power, secrets, and survival. For more stories that defy the ordinary, subscribe now and join the journey of transformation. Sophia Bennett's life was a daily battle against despair and monotony. At 26, her dreams of an enchanting future had long been replaced by the harsh reality of survival. Every morning, as the first light crept into her cramped studio apartment in Miami, she could already feel the weight of another exhausting day ahead. The walls around her, chipped and peeling, echoed the silent narrative of countless disappointments. In that small space, where a barely functioning air conditioner battled the relentless heat, Sophia found herself trapped between hope and resignation. Her days were spent behind the bar of a dimly lit club, where neon signs flickered over the faces of indifferent, wealthy patrons. Each night, she mixed cocktails and listened to the idle chatter of those who scarcely noticed her presence. They came dressed in expensive suits and glittering dresses, a stark reminder of the luxurious life that remained forever out of her reach. With every clink of ice in a glass, Sophia felt both invisible and undervalued. Once, she had dreamed of attending college and creating art that moved people, but reality had battered those aspirations into oblivion. Yet, in the midst of hardship, there was a quiet strength in Sophia. She learned to smile in the face of despair, to keep going despite the crushing exhaustion. Each shift was a test of her endurance, a reminder that survival was a victory in itself. Late at night, when the club finally emptied and the silence set in, she would sit by her window and let her mind wander to a life beyond these four dilapidated walls. In these stolen moments, the possibility of change glimmered like a fragile candle in the darkness. Then, one humid Miami night, as the club's usual din was interrupted by an eerie hush, a subtle shift occurred. A presence not often seen among the regular clientele appeared, a mysterious man whose intense gaze seemed to search beyond the surface. For reasons she couldn't yet understand, Sophia felt that something in her life was about to change. That inexplicable moment marked the beginning of an adventure that would pull her out of the cycle of struggle and thrust her into a world where power, wealth, and secrets reigned supreme. The ordinary routine of mixing drinks and enduring indifference was about to be replaced by an extraordinary destiny that beckoned from the shadows. As she served drinks with practiced grace, the neon lights and murmurs of the club seemed to fade into the background. A dormant ember of hope began to glow within her, a feeling that her fate was intertwined with events far greater than the routine drudgery of her existence. In that fleeting moment, amid the clamor of a forgotten song and the soft hum of conversation, Sophia's inner voice whispered that destiny was knocking. Little did she know, the encounter that very night would set in motion a series of events capable of shattering her old life forever, opening a door to a future filled with both dazzling promise and heart-wrenching challenges. On that fateful night, as the humid Miami air swirled around the neon-lit club, Sophia's routine was abruptly interrupted by an unexpected invitation. In the corner of the bustling room, amid familiar faces and idle chatter, sat Vincent Aldridge, a man whose name was spoken with awe in elite circles. Despite his advanced age of 72 and a frail constitution that betrayed his failing health, Vincent possessed an air of authority that drew every gaze his way. His eyes, sharp and discerning, held a glimmer of both wisdom and determination that belied his physical decline. Throughout the evening, Vincent's presence seemed magnetic, and he fixed his attention on Sophia as she moved gracefully behind the bar. His gaze was not one of idle curiosity, it was deliberate and piercing, as if he were trying to decipher a hidden potential in her. Before Sophia could fully comprehend the intensity of his stare, a discreet assistant approached her. With a quiet urgency, the man slid a sleek card across the worn countertop and said, "Mr. Aldridge would like to speak with you." The words felt surreal. For years, Sophia had accepted her unremarkable existence, but now a spark of possibility was offered in a single, unassuming gesture. Her heart pounded with equal measures of trepidation and anticipation. The card represented an opportunity, one that promised a departure from the endless nights of anonymity and mediocrity. Gathering her courage, she agreed to meet the enigmatic billionaire. In a private, softly lit lounge away from the chaotic clamor of the club, she found herself face to face with Vincent. The room exuded an understated elegance that contrasted sharply with her humble beginnings. As she sat down, Vincent's gaze never wavered, and he leaned forward, his voice low and measured as he asked, "What do you want, Miss Bennett?" The question struck Sophia like a jolt of electricity. For the first time in years, someone cared enough to inquire about her desires, her future, her inner dreams. In that moment, the question transcended the mundane. It became a call to action, a challenge to envision a life that extended beyond the boundaries of survival. Vincent began to speak of a world where wealth and power could offer not just comfort, but a chance at reinvention. His words painted a vivid picture of opulent gatherings, influential contacts, and the possibility of a legacy that could outlast him. As the conversation deepened, Sophia found herself teetering between wonder and uncertainty. Could she truly abandon her modest existence for a life defined by grand expectations and glittering facades? Vincent's proposal was as tantalizing as it was enigmatic, a union not born of passion, but of necessity, aimed at preserving his fading empire and his carefully constructed public image. With every word, the promise of escape from her current life grew stronger, even as the price of such a transformation loomed ominously. That night, the seeds of a new destiny were sown. The invitation to step into Vincent's world was a turning point, a chance to rewrite her future with the ink of ambition and the risk of unforeseen consequences. In the days following that life-altering meeting, Sophia's thoughts swirled with questions and possibilities. The encounter with Vincent Aldridge had left her reeling. Every whispered promise and subtle glance had stoked the embers of hope within her. Now, as she faced the stark reality of her existence, she wondered if fate had finally offered her an escape from the unending cycle of struggle. It wasn't long before Vincent returned with a proposal that would force her to confront both her deepest fears and her boldest aspirations. One late afternoon, as the Miami sun dipped low over the horizon, Sophia received an invitation to meet Vincent in his opulent study, a room that exuded old-world charm and an air of gravitas. The space was adorned with rich mahogany furnishings, deep crimson draperies, and shelves filled with ancient tomes that spoke of power and legacy. There, in that imposing setting, Vincent laid his cards on the table. His proposition was audacious. He wanted her to become his public companion. More than a mere date or fleeting dalliance, this role meant being by his side at high-profile events, social functions, and exclusive gatherings, essentially, to become the face of his carefully curated image as a dying billionaire. The offer, though laced with the promise of unimaginable wealth, was also a test of her resolve. Vincent explained that the marriage would not be one of love, but rather a strategic arrangement designed to quell the gossip and scrutiny surrounding his failing health. For Vincent, a youthful and captivating partner would project an image of vitality and continuity, an image that could mask the reality of his declining state. In exchange, Sophia would receive financial security that far surpassed anything she had ever known. The details were meticulously laid out: a lavish lifestyle, an estate that stretched across acres of manicured grounds, and a fortune that would ensure her comfort for the rest of her life. Sophia's heart wavered between disbelief and a reluctant thrill. The offer was as seductive as it was dangerous, an opportunity to escape the drudgery of her current life, yet one that required sacrificing a piece of herself in the process. The proposition was wrapped in layers of complexity, the allure of wealth and status tangled with the stark reality of entering a world where she would be constantly scrutinized, judged, and expected to perform a role that felt alien to her own nature. Every word Vincent spoke resonated with the promise of transformation, yet echoed with a cautionary note about the price of ambition. As she left the study that day, the weight of the decision pressed upon her. She replayed Vincent's measured tone and the way his eyes seemed to see right through her, as if he already knew the hidden depths of her longing for a better life. The proposal was not simply an offer of wealth. It was an invitation to step into a life that was both dazzling and perilous, a world where love was secondary to image and survival was measured in assets and influence. In that moment, Sophia realized that accepting Vincent's offer would mean venturing into uncharted territory, a path fraught with uncertainty, but also filled with the possibility of a rebirth. The proposal had ignited a spark within her, a spark that promised to transform her existence, even as it threatened to consume her in its brilliant, all-encompassing light. The day of the wedding dawned in stark contrast to the dark, familiar corners of Sophia's old life. As she prepared for the grand ceremony, every detail around her screamed opulence, yet beneath the glittering veneer lay a bitter truth. The lavish mansion of Vincent Aldridge was set as the stage for a spectacle that had been meticulously orchestrated to preserve his crumbling legacy. Though the atmosphere was rife with celebration and the clink of fine china, Sophia felt a profound emptiness creeping into her soul. Dressed in an extravagant gown that shimmered with every movement, she stepped into a world of high society, one where every gesture was scrutinized, every smile measured. The guests, a mixture of social elites and influential figures, whispered amongst themselves. Names were tossed around with veiled disdain: gold digger, trophy wife, and other sharp epithets floated through the grand hall. Yet Sophia maintained her composure, her face a mask of serene acceptance. Every step down the aisle was calculated, a performance for the public eye that concealed the inner turmoil that threatened to overwhelm her. Vincent, standing at the altar with a solemn dignity, regarded her with an expression that was difficult to read. His eyes betrayed no warmth, only the cold necessity of a man clinging to his fading power. The wedding was less a union of hearts than a carefully constructed contract. Each exchange of vows, each symbolic gesture, was a reminder that this marriage was born not of love, but of strategic necessity. Sophia's role was clear. She was to embody the image of vitality and continuity that Vincent desperately needed, even if it meant sacrificing her own emotional well-being. The reception that followed was a carefully choreographed affair. Every toast, every laugh, was staged to impress the high society guests who gathered to witness the union. The couple's first dance, a slow, measured waltz beneath crystal chandeliers, was meant to symbolize the seamless merging of two worlds. But as Sophia moved with mechanical grace, she felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. The magic of the moment was tainted by the knowledge that the intimacy shared on that dance floor was nothing more than an illusion, a performance for an audience that cared more about appearances than the truth. Throughout the evening, as cameras flashed and the press eagerly documented every moment, Sophia's mind drifted back to the long nights behind the bar. The memories of hardship were stark reminders of the life she was leaving behind, one filled with genuine struggles and quiet victories. Yet here, in the midst of manufactured celebration, she was forced to play a part that felt increasingly foreign. Vincent's eyes, often distant and calculating, offered no comfort. Instead, they served as a constant reminder of the transactional nature of their union. As the wedding drew to a close and the final notes of a live band faded into silence, Sophia stood alone on the balcony of the mansion, looking out at a sea of unfamiliar faces. In that quiet moment, the weight of her new reality settled upon her. She was now a public figure in a world of superficial glamour, a gilded symbol of a dying legacy. The celebration had been grand, the promises extravagant, but deep inside, she knew that the price of this new life was more than she had ever anticipated. The wedding had sealed her fate, binding her to a future filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and the constant reminder that the love she had hoped for was lost long before the vows were exchanged. In the aftermath of the wedding, Sophia's new reality began to take shape, a reality defined not by romance, but by the relentless pressures of high society and the relentless pursuit of survival. The vast estate that Vincent Aldridge left her in charge of was a marvel of opulence, yet it felt more like a gilded cage than a home. The sprawling mansion, with its marble floors and intricately carved moldings, was filled with servants who maintained a respectful distance. Their stares, although polite, were laden with quiet judgment. In every corner of the estate, every polished surface and pristine garden, Sophia sensed the oppressive weight of expectation. At first, she had believed that the transition from a life of struggle to one of luxury would be liberating. The promise of financial security had glimmered like a beacon in the dark, offering escape from years of hardship. However, as the days turned into weeks, the reality of her new existence set in. The opulence that surrounded her was suffocating. The mansion's grandeur only served to amplify her isolation, its vast halls echoing with the absence of genuine warmth and connection. Vincent's carefully arranged schedule left little room for spontaneity or personal interaction, and even the lavish parties and gala events felt like performances in which she was forced to play the leading role. High society, for all its glitter and glamour, proved to be a harsh world for someone with Sophia's background. At exclusive gatherings and charity events, she was met with veiled contempt from those who saw her as an outsider, a woman thrust into their ranks by circumstance rather than by merit. Even Vincent's own family, particularly his two sons Nathan and Lucas, made their disdain unmistakably clear. They whispered behind her back, wagering on how long she would survive in their father's world. Their contempt cut deeper than any physical blow. and Sophia found herself caught in a relentless battle not only for her financial future, but also for her dignity. Despite the isolation and the constant scrutiny, Sophia began to learn the intricate rules of this new society. She studied the art of conversation, perfected her smile, and learned to navigate the labyrinth of alliances and rivalries that defined her social circles. Slowly, she crafted an image of sophistication and control, a mask that allowed her to hide the vulnerability beneath. Every gala, every meticulously planned dinner, became a stage on which she performed, each interaction a calculated move in a game she was only beginning to understand. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, the loneliness was profound. The estate, with its impressive facade and meticulously maintained gardens, felt like an endless maze that kept her captive. In quiet moments, when the laughter and music of a party faded into silence, she would wander the corridors alone, haunted by memories of a life that had once been raw and real. The gilded cage of wealth and privilege, which had promised freedom from the hardships of the past, now threatened to imprison her in a world devoid of true connection. In every glittering reflection and every whispered comment, she could sense that the price of this new life was the very essence of her soul. Just as Sophia was beginning to adapt to the burdens of her gilded existence, fate delivered a devastating blow. In a sudden twist that no one could have foreseen, Vincent Aldridge passed away. The news rippled through high society like a shockwave, and within days, the opulent halls of the mansion were filled with somber faces and hushed conversations. The funeral, arranged with the same lavish precision as his life had been, was a spectacle designed to honor a man whose legacy was as complex as it was controversial. For Sophia, however, the ceremony felt empty, a hollow pageant marking the end of a contract rather than the loss of a husband. Standing amidst a sea of mourners, Sophia was overwhelmed by a mixture of grief, numbness, and a creeping sense of betrayal. The man whose proposal had once promised hope had never truly been hers. In the eyes of the elite, the union had been little more than a transaction, and the final act of his life was now being reduced to public spectacle. As whispers of sympathy mingled with snide remarks from those who had once doubted her, she braced herself for the inevitable fallout. Within 3 days of the funeral, the reading of Vincent's will revealed a stark reality. While she was bequeathed enough wealth to secure a comfortable life, the majority of the estate had been quietly funneled away, controlled by Nathan and Lucas, whose smirks spoke louder than any words. The loss of Vincent was more than the death of a man. It was the collapse of the fragile bridge between her past struggles and her newfound fortune. The estate that once symbolized hope now felt like a cold monument to her isolation. In private moments, Sophia wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of her mourned the man who had opened a door to a life of luxury, while another part felt a deep, simmering anger. How could she have been so thoroughly deceived? How could a union built on necessity turn into such an empty performance? The shock of Vincent's passing forced Sophia to confront the reality of her situation. No longer was she merely a reluctant partner in his grand design. She was now the reluctant guardian of a legacy that was as burdensome as it was opulent. With every glance from the disapproving faces at the funeral, she realized that her battle was far from over. The financial empire that Vincent had built, once seen as a ticket to a better life, was now a source of bitter conflict. Nathan and Lucas, armed with power and influence, began maneuvering behind the scenes to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Amidst the legal and emotional chaos, Sophia vowed that she would not let Vincent's death mark the end of her story. Even as the world around her celebrated a spectacle of mourning, she felt a determination stirring within, a resolve to fight for what was hers, to challenge the machinations of those who would exploit her vulnerability. The unexpected loss had shattered her illusions about love and loyalty, but it also ignited a spark of defiance. In the silent aftermath of the funeral, as the echoes of whispered condolences faded, Sophia began to prepare for the legal battle and personal war that lay ahead. The loss was a devastating blow, yet it was also the catalyst for a transformation that would redefine her destiny. In the days following Vincent's death, the cold reality of the inheritance battle set in like a relentless storm. Sophia, now thrust into the role of the unexpected widow, found herself face-to-face with a legal and personal challenge that threatened to consume her. With Vincent's passing, it was revealed that while she had been granted enough to live comfortably, the vast majority of his fortune was under the control of his two sons, Nathan and Lucas. Their smug confidence and subtle taunts in social circles ignited a burning resolve in her heart. Determined not to be a pawn in their dangerous game, Sophia reached out to the finest attorneys she could find. Her first meeting with her legal team was a blur of legal jargon and cautious optimism. The lawyer explained that there were irregularities in the distribution of assets, a series of suspicious transfers, and hidden accounts that suggested foul play. The inheritance was not just a matter of money. It was the battleground for dignity and survival. Each document she signed, each piece of evidence uncovered, stoked the fire of her determination. Sophia knew that she was not merely fighting for wealth, but for the right to reclaim the narrative of her life. Her struggle was transforming into a battle for justice. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of the unfolding drama. Headlines began to paint her as the gold-digging widow, embroiled in a high-stakes legal feud with Vincent's scornful heirs. But as details emerged about the questionable transactions and the hidden transfers, public opinion began to shift. What was once perceived as a sham marriage gradually morphed into a story of a wronged woman standing up against a corrupt establishment. In interviews and legal filings, Sophia's quiet determination and unyielding spirit resonated with the public. The narrative was no longer about her being an opportunist. It was about a courageous woman fighting back against exploitation. Every day, as legal documents piled up and court dates loomed on the horizon, the pressure mounted. Nathan and Lucas, who had once mocked her existence, began using every resource at their disposal, manipulating the legal system, delaying proceedings, and even sending veiled threats to undermine her claim. Yet, for every tactic they employed, Sophia and her team uncovered new evidence of wrongdoing. In the face of endless legal battles and the stress of public scrutiny, she discovered an inner strength she never knew existed. Late into the night, as she pored over financial statements and legal briefs in the quiet solitude of Vincent's now silent mansion, Sophia felt the heavy burden of responsibility. This was not just a battle for money. It was a war for her identity. With each page she turned, with each legal strategy discussed, she was reclaiming her power. The estate, once a symbol of her gilded cage, was slowly becoming the stage for her uprising. She vowed that she would not walk away empty-handed, that every asset, every hidden account would be a step toward justice and reclaiming her future. The battle had only just begun, but Sophia's resolve was unbreakable. Amidst the constant pressure and the orchestrated schemes of Nathan and Lucas, she emerged as a determined force, fighting not just for wealth, but for the right to define her own destiny. With her trusted legal team at her side and a burgeoning public outcry in her favor, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of Vincent Aldridge's empire. As the legal struggle intensified, the battle for Vincent Aldridge's estate evolved into a full-scale war, one waged both in the courtroom and in the shadows of high society. Nathan, with his deep-rooted influence and connections, began to deploy every tactic at his disposal. His influence in the legal realm was vast, and he orchestrated delays and manipulated court filings with an almost ruthless efficiency. Meanwhile, Lucas, equally determined to protect what he believed was rightfully his, set in motion covert strategies designed to discredit Sophia's claims. Sophia, however, refused to yield. With her legal team working day and night, she began to uncover evidence of a series of hidden transactions and dubious transfers that had siphoned large portions of the estate away from her. These revelations painted a damning picture of financial impropriety within the Aldridge empire, a narrative that could shift public opinion dramatically. Reporters and journalists, sensing a scandal that transcended a simple inheritance dispute, flocked to the story. What began as a tale of a gold-digging widow transformed into a riveting exposé of corruption, greed, and the abuse of power. Every court hearing became a battleground where legal arguments were as sharp as knives, and every piece of evidence was scrutinized in a media frenzy. Sophia's determination was matched only by the mounting pressure of public expectation. She began working closely with her lead attorney, Daniel Calloway, whose relentless drive and uncompromising ethics made him a formidable opponent to Nathan and Lucas. Together, they unearthed documents that hinted at years of financial misdeeds, cover-ups that could tarnish the Aldridge name forever. Each revelation was a strike against the son's carefully constructed facade, turning the tide of the legal war in Sophia's favor. As negotiations stalled and tensions escalated, the pressure took its toll on all involved. Anonymous threats and subtle acts of intimidation became common occurrences, each designed to unsettle and discredit Sophia. Yet, rather than cowering, she responded with a steely resolve. Public opinion, once ambivalent, began to rally behind her. The narrative of the wronged woman fighting a corrupt system resonated with a growing audience, and calls for transparency in the legal proceedings grew louder by the day. Despite the relentless onslaught of challenges, Sophia's inner strength and determination shone through. Each day brought new evidence, new legal victories, and a slowly shifting balance of power. The once insurmountable empire that had belonged to Vincent Aldridge now trembled under the weight of its own secrets. With every court ruling and every public statement, Sophia was not only defending her inheritance, she was fighting for her very identity. The war had escalated beyond the confines of a courtroom, spilling into the public sphere and forever altering the dynamics of high society. In the heat of battle, Sophia emerged as both a symbol of resistance and a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever been underestimated. After months of grueling legal battles and public scrutiny, the day finally arrived when a settlement was reached. The details remained shrouded in secrecy, but the outcome was clear. Sophia secured a substantial sum, enough to live in comfort, though far less than the vast fortune she had once envisioned. The courtroom victory, however, came at a steep personal cost. As she signed the final papers, a heavy emptiness filled her heart. The money was there, a tangible symbol of her hard-fought triumph, yet it carried no warmth, no joy. Instead, it served as a stark reminder of the battles she had endured and the sacrifices made along the way. In the immediate aftermath, the high society that had once jeered at her now offered polite, if not patronizing, nods of acknowledgement. The media spun the story into a narrative of a resilient widow who had fought against all odds, yet beneath the veneer of victory lay a profound sense of disillusionment. The grand estate, once a gilded cage from which she yearned to escape, now felt like a mausoleum, a monument to a life defined more by conflict than by fulfillment. Late at night, as the echoes of celebratory headlines and congratulatory messages faded into silence, Sophia found herself alone with her thoughts. The legal battle, with all its triumphs and setbacks, had transformed her in ways she had never anticipated. The fiery determination that once propelled her forward now seemed overshadowed by a lingering melancholy. She wondered if the victory was hollow, a victory that had secured her financial stability but had cost her a piece of her soul. In quiet moments, the weight of every sleepless night, every bitter confrontation, pressed down upon her. The public might have seen a strong, triumphant woman, but within, she was battling an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. As she walked through the quiet corridors of the mansion that now belonged to her, every room seemed to whisper memories of a life that had been a constant struggle. The triumphant smile she displayed in public felt increasingly like a mask, a facade to hide the pain of what she had lost along the way. The money and the power that were meant to set her free now chained her to a past of relentless conflict and unfulfilled dreams. Even the legal victory, which had been hard-won through tears and determination, left her with a lingering question: at what cost did she achieve this semblance of success? Determined not to let the bitterness of defeat define her future, Sophia resolved to reclaim the parts of herself that had been eroded by years of struggle and conflict. Though the settlement was a victory in the eyes of the world, she knew that the real battle was just beginning. The battle to find meaning in a life that now seemed dictated by a series of legal contracts and public expectations. The hollow victory, as it was a bittersweet milestone marking the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. Just when Sophia thought that the legal battles were behind her, new challenges emerged from the shadows of her past. One morning, she awoke to discover that her bank accounts had been frozen. The financial security she had fought so hard to secure was suddenly locked behind an impenetrable wall of bureaucratic red tape. It was a deliberate move by Nathan, whose resentment had only grown stronger after the settlement. With every frozen dollar, it was clear that his vendetta was far from over. The media, quick to seize on every twist in her story, speculated that this was the final act in a long, bitter war, a final attempt to strip her of everything she had worked so hard to obtain. But Sophia was not one to be easily defeated. With the support of her trusted attorney Daniel Calloway, she launched an investigation into the irregularities. The breakthrough came in the form of incriminating evidence, records of illegal dealings, financial transactions that spanned years, and hidden accounts that hinted at a deliberate scheme orchestrated by Nathan to undermine her independence. Each piece of evidence was a dagger aimed at dismantling his carefully constructed narrative, a narrative that had long depicted her as the opportunist who had capitalized on Vincent's dying days. Armed with this newfound leverage, Sophia set about the daunting task of reclaiming control over her life. In confidential meetings with legal experts and investigative journalists, she began to expose the depths of corruption that had festered behind the walls of the Aldridge Empire. The scandal that unfolded in the press was both damning and cathartic. It transformed her public image once again, from a victim of circumstance to a woman who dared to challenge the powerful forces that had tried to silence her. The once hidden secrets of the Aldridge legacy were now emerging into the light, and with each revelation, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, the shadows of her past were not so easily exorcised. The emotional toll of confronting the deceit and betrayal was immense. In the quiet hours of the night, as the details of Nathan's schemes replayed in her mind, she struggled to reconcile the person she had become with the woman she once hoped to be. The battle had reshaped her, forging a steely resolve, but also leaving deep scars. Despite this, Sophia refused to let the past define her future. With every legal victory and every public statement, she strove to assert her independence and reclaim the dignity that had been so callously stripped away. The confrontation with Nathan was no longer just a financial dispute. It was a clash of wills, a struggle for the right to determine her own destiny. In the corridors of power, beneath the glare of the media spotlight, Sophia emerged as a fighter who had not only survived the onslaught of betrayal, but had turned it into a weapon against those who sought to control her. The shadows of the past, though still ever present, began to recede in the face of her determination. And so, as she prepared for the next stage of her journey, she carried with her the hard-won lessons of trust, resilience, and the unwavering belief that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would eventually come. Despite her legal triumphs and the public support that had grown around her, the relentless pressure of her new life began to take an insidious toll on Sophia. The glamour and wealth that were meant to be her salvation slowly revealed themselves to be double-edged swords. The once vibrant spirit that had fought so hard to reclaim her independence now found itself sinking into a quiet despair. Nights that were supposed to be filled with the promise of a bright future turned into long hours of solitude, where the shadows of her past seemed to close in with a suffocating intensity. Unable to escape the isolation of her opulent surroundings, Sophia increasingly turned to alcohol as a refuge, a temporary escape from the overwhelming sense of emptiness that had taken root in her soul. At first, a glass of wine in the quiet hours felt like a small indulgence, a way to dull the incessant hum of internal conflict. But gradually, that indulgence evolved into a desperate need. The lavish parties and high society events that had once been her battleground now became reminders of the life she had lost, an existence filled with genuine struggle and authentic connections. In the midst of this downward spiral, Daniel Calloway remained a steadfast presence. His unwavering support and genuine concern provided a fragile lifeline in a sea of despair. Yet, even his constant reassurance could not bridge the chasm that had grown inside her. The weight of every legal victory, every bitter confrontation with Nathan and Lucas, and every whispered judgment in high society left her emotionally battered. With each passing day, the pain of isolation deepened, and the line between her public persona and her inner reality blurred. One fateful evening, in a moment of reckless desperation, Sophia made a decision that would further complicate her already tumultuous life. Amid the haze of intoxication and loneliness, she agreed to marry Daniel. The decision was not born of love or passion. It was an act of survival, a desperate attempt to find some semblance of stability in a world that had become increasingly chaotic. The ceremony was a quiet affair, devoid of the pomp and circumstance that had characterized her previous wedding. Yet, the union, like so many of her choices, was marked by a profound emptiness. Daniel, who had been her rock during the legal battles, now found himself entangled in a relationship born out of mutual need rather than genuine affection. As the days passed, the consequences of that impulsive decision began to manifest. The marriage, intended as a lifeline, instead deepened Sophia's sense of isolation. The quiet routine of married life, devoid of passion and filled with unspoken regrets, only magnified the hollowness that had taken root within her. She tried to find solace in the security of wealth and the public victories that had once made her feel invincible, but the relentless echoes of her past struggles were impossible to ignore. With every passing day, the world outside continued its relentless pace. News of new scandals, whispers of betrayal, and shifting allegiances in high society, while Sophia felt increasingly trapped in a cycle of despair and self-doubt. The downward spiral was complete. In the solitude of the mansion that was once a symbol of her newfound freedom, she found herself lost in a labyrinth of regret and sorrow. The fierce, determined woman who had fought so hard to reclaim her destiny was now a shadow of her former self. Haunted by memories, weighed down by the cost of her victories, and unable to find a way out of the darkness that had overtaken her. In the quiet aftermath of the turmoil, as the world outside continued to spin with new controversies and fleeting scandals, Sophia began to glimpse the faint promise of a new beginning. The journey that had brought her from the depths of despair to the pinnacle of wealth and power had been wrought with pain, loss, and the constant battle for self-definition. Standing on the precipice of this uncertain future, she realized that she had two choices: to let the past consume her entirely, or to rebuild her life from the broken pieces of her former self. One cool morning, with the weight of her regrets still heavy upon her shoulders, Sophia decided it was time to reclaim her identity. She took long walks through the sprawling estate, not as a captive of its opulence, but as a seeker of renewal. With each step, she vowed to rediscover the passions and dreams that had once defined her. The journey was not without its scars. Every faded memory, every bitter encounter, served as both a reminder of her suffering and a beacon of hope for a future reimagined. Determined to find meaning beyond the confines of wealth and legal battles, Sophia began to surround herself with those who understood the value of genuine connection, friends from her past who remembered her before the glitz and glamour had clouded her true self. She slowly started to invest time in rediscovering old passions, reading, painting, and writing her own story rather than living one dictated by external forces. In the quiet moments of reflection, she acknowledged the mistakes she had made and the battles she had fought, both externally and within herself. Her marriage to Daniel, once a desperate attempt at survival, evolved into a more complex relationship. Together, they began to seek counseling and to rediscover the simple pleasures of life that had been overshadowed by conflict and loss. The process was slow, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt, yet each small victory was a step toward reclaiming her spirit. The mansion that had once felt like a tomb gradually transformed into a space of possibility, a blank canvas on which she could finally paint the portrait of a life that was truly her own. As Sophia looked toward the horizon, the promise of a new beginning was both terrifying and exhilarating. The scars of the past were indelible, yet they served as a testament to her resilience. In that delicate balance between memory and hope, she found the courage to imagine a future free from the battles that had defined her for so long. With a renewed sense of purpose, she embraced the uncertainty of tomorrow. The story of Sophia Bennett was far from over. Instead, it was entering a new chapter, one where she would choose to live for herself, rebuild from the ruins, and finally learn to love the person she had become. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your support means everything and helps bring more incredible stories to life. Stay tuned for the next one. See you soon.